Now you can do your show and walk away, so yeah, thank you. Don't try this at home, try it here. So I was spot on with the copy pasting there. So what an interesting place we have here. So I was told that this is an old power plant. Pretty cool looking place, but a little bit more cyberpunk, steampunk, and we have a party going on here. But anyway, good to be here today. So we have a huge topic to cover, life without firewalls. Ain't that sweet? So we've been buying those boxes like 30 plus years, and we just love them and hug them, and I have 2 underneath my bed at home. So it's interesting. And I'm here from the Cisco, so Cisco is the biggest firewall vendor in the planet, and there's a guy from Finland here in a steampunk room talking about life without a firewall. So what's going on here? But anyway, the topic itself, as I said, it's massive and it's very controversial. So we're going to cover it in a couple of ways. So I have a handful of myths, claims, and we throw them in the lab. And we'll examine them and see what is the outcome. So I'm your host today. My name is Marko Haarala. I'm covering the security architecture at Cisco and also the business for Finland and Baltic. So let's get the show going on. The first one is, I think, at least for me, is one of the biggest ones, because this was the statement that the whole next generation firewall was born. You get the better visibility, you get good visibility. And if you think about this, it's kind of logical. So before that, we had firewalls, stateful inspection, port filtering, all that stuff, and now we added an IPS on top of the firewall, so you get the better, super good visibility. But is it like that? Let's throw this in the lab. So let's examine this from the couple of the angles nowadays. So, of course, you need to ask today, where are my users and where is my business? Thanks to a very interesting world that we are living at today, it's not like it used to be. People are or have been talking about borderless world for years, but still the number one thing that you're going to buy is a firewall. And if you're living in a borderless world, we need to look at things from the business point of view. And this is kind of the list that you probably should do if you're looking for a good visibility towards your network. So where are my users? Well, they are not at the office. At least in my country, a majority of the people are somewhere else. Where's your firewall? And we, of course, try to solve the problem by putting a VPN there. People are at home doing remote work, put the VPN tunnel in place, and suddenly you have all the problems in the world because people are watching Netflix and YouTube through the VPN tunnel. So that's what happened, because they're not definitely working at home, if you believe the news at the Finland at least. And where's my business? My business is the cloud. I couldn't understand anything about the previous presentation, but they were talking about private cloud and everything as a service. So everything as a service is somewhere else it's not in your data center. So how do we handle this? So what's the role of the firewall in this type of scenario? So do we actually get the visibility? And how does the bad things happen today? If you read the news, somebody went to the cloud and used an API to steal everything. Somebody was doing the phishing, stole everything with that. What's the role of the firewall on that? And of course, everything is encrypted. It's been encrypted from the day one if you look at the bad guys, which is kind of the interesting thing, that because next generation firewall was sold on assumption that we can open up to SSL. Yeah, whoa, cool stuff. But what about the bad stuff? Bad guys are using encryption that is proprietary. You can't open that. So how much do you actually get the visibility with the firewall when your people are not where the firewall is, the bad stuff is happening somewhere else, and your business is somewhere else? So I call this busted. Next-gen firewall is not giving you a good visibility at all. So let's go further. Once again, this is super logical. Better firewall gives you a better detection and response. How many seen this claim? Raise your hands. 2. And I have to ask, by the way, what's going on here? Majority of you guys are there. What's wrong with that side of the room? Are the chairs dirty or something? What's going on? Nobody told me I was sitting there. So what's wrong? So let's back to the myth busting. So better firewall gives you better detection. So let's throw this in a lab and see the case. So a couple of the first ones are the same. So where are my users? Where are my business? So of course, if you don't have anything in place, you have like a 90s firewall in place, you probably get some benefits of upgrading that to the next generation firewall, and you probably get something in the context of better detection and visibility. But once again, if you look at this from the business point of view, we are living in a privacy-oriented world. Everything is encrypted and can't open that. So do I actually get the better detection and response if I can't look what's wrong? It's like a philosophical thing. I don't understand anything that is going here, but hey, you get a better something. But anyway, it's so freaking amazing when you see these things and people are thinking, I have only this much of money available, my budget is here, what do? I buy a bigger firewall and I'm good to go. So interesting. So let's see, how does this go? It's plausible. I call it a plausible. Why? I said, if you don't have anything there, of course, if you throw there a next generation firewall, you probably get something out of it. And if you are living in a world that is the old school world, you people are at the office and you have your own data center, it's plausible. But in many cases, it just doesn't happen. The firewall is not where your users are. And if you people are remotely working at the summer cottage and side by the lake having a beer, do they actually have a firewall at the backpack? No, they can do heavy lifting. Hey, I'm at the gym. So yeah. But anyway, plausible. So let's go further. This is yet another one, third one. So cloud security. We are living in a hybrid world. A lot of as a service, infrastructure as a service, software as a service, everything as a service, cloud, well, cloud networks and so on. If you start to secure those things that are at the cloud, after all, it's just a computer somewhere else, it's not on a data center, it starts with the cloud firewall. So interesting. So let's throw this in a lab and discuss about it. You need to look this, especially this one from the business point of view, and look down. If you have a cloud, whatever it is, Microsoft, AWS, Google, your own hybrid from the local service provider, anyway, it's just a computer, you need to look this downwards. And you need to look things that happen in the cloud. And we have those elements. We have users, we have computers, and we have applications, mainly. And we have a couple of other things. But anyway, once again, what is the role of a firewall if we manage to put it in a cloud to secure your applications and the data at the cloud? It's a very interesting kind of discussion, because way back in time we used to talk about the HTTP. That was the universal firewall bypass protocol. So same thing is happening at the cloud. You have something there. If you want to use that, you need to open up the port. If you close the port, nobody's using that. So if you open up the port, you're vulnerable. That's the way it goes. The application is going to break. So what are the risks that you're actually trying to mitigate? That is the key question here. I need to keep my data safe. I need to look the users that are accessing the data, and I need to make sure that they're accessing the data with the machines that are at least remotely capable of doing what they're supposed to be doing. In other words, they are not hacked or backdoored or any of that stuff. So what is the next generation firewall role with that? Question that we need to explore. And the other thing is that if you go towards the agile companies that are kind of natively cloud-born, if you go out there and introduce kind of, in their mind, the legacy architecture that we have this kind of AWS shop running here, and we put the firewall there, they're going to laugh their ass off and throw you away through the window. because they don't want any of the legacy stuff at the cloud, because the whole reason that the cloud was born was the APIs and agile business and that sort of thing. So I call this busted. So definitely not. It's not going to go like that. Hey, we need to do something with the cloud. Let's put a firewall there. Open up the port. You're vulnerable. That's the way it goes. And if you open up the port, wrong guy is going to go there, stole your data. So that's the way it goes. So, another one. Next generation of firewalls are not needed anymore. So we're getting closer to the topic here. So what do you guys think? Based on the previous, should we throw them away and do something else? Spend the money something, whatever. Zero trust. By the way, somebody is telling also the story out there at the public that the zero trust equals firewall, which is pretty interesting. Also, it's another topic for another session, so happy to be here again. But hey, next generation firewalls are not needed anymore. So let's look at this. Let's throw it in the lab. To be able to test this and look at the outcome objectively is to examine the use cases of a next generation firewall, how they are applicable to you when you do your modern business here. So what are the use cases for next generation? We covered the better detection and response capabilities. You might get something, but then again, we have a couple of others. VPN. We still use VPN a lot. Even that there's kind of VPN-less architecture happening at the moment, so it's kind of an end-user thing that they don't like to open up a VPN client and go to the data center and do things or go somewhere else, because first of all, you don't have a data center. It's a SaaS application in many cases. And if you manage to open up a VPN, then you're going to plug the VPN bandwidth by doing something weird like Netflix, as we discussed previously. But then again, we have a couple of use cases. I call it that the VPN is a good use case. So we still need firewalls to kind of terminate the VPN and build site-to-site connectivity in some of the cases, if we are not running towards the software-defined WAN type of architecture or any of that. But I call it a good kind of a use case. The other one is segmentation. That's an interesting one. One of my personal favorite ones. So from almost like from day one, somewhere at the 90s, that somebody came up with an idea, just like the end of 80s, that hey, firewall is a good tool to do the segmentation. Any of you heard that? Any of you are doing that? Yeah. And then you can kind of continue the idea of that I have my crown jewel server here. It's on the segment, and it's connected to the users. So the user comes in, deletes everything from that system, or stole everything from that system. How is that segmentation going to prevent that? So you can't segment the users out from your business. So that's the fundamental flaw in that thinking. But there are a couple of use cases. Of course, at least in Finland, many of those insurance companies are requiring customers to use segmentation with the environment so they can apply to the cyber insurance. We can also debate about what is the kind of the outcome of that. But anyway, it's a logical thing for us. We kind of cyber guys, so let's segment it. But same time, if you look at the networks, they are identity-based networks, software-defined networks. They are segmented by default, and same is happening at the cloud. So it's kind of plausible that that use case is still valid. The third one is definitely valid. So IPv6 and whatever is coming at the horizon, so definitely we are not there yet. So IP address, we still need firewall to do network address translation in many of the cases. So for sure, that is a good use case, and that continues to be the case for years. So I call this that next generation of firewalls are not needed anymore. It's plausible, and it depends about your business. But in the same time, if you look at the use cases like VPN termination, you look at the segmenting if you still want to do that, and other stuff, the network access translation. Do you really need a next generation firewall for that? What about the cheapest one that you'll find and do that with that, and you're good to go. Save the money and buy something else. So I call this plausible. It could be the case that they are obsolete, depending on your business, so buy something else, complement that, or it's the other way around. So, as kind of a summary here, the biggest problem, kind of the purpose of this presentation, the whole crown jewel, and idea is that I'm a techie to the bone, so I've been in the cyber from beginning of the 90s, and of course, when we talk about cybersecurity, we look things through the technology. It's just obvious thing that's going to happen. So how do we build a better kind of defense in depth? How do we build this and that? Of course, we're going to talk about it from the technology first. And that is the thing that we need to change if we want to survive in this crazy world that we are at the moment. We need to look things from the business point of view. Because people are not there where they used to be. Our business is not there where it used to be. And definitely to OT, it's an interesting one in many cases, because if you look at this picture, there's a couple of things that usually highlight. You have laptops, whatever brand you like, whatever Linux, Unix, Microsoft, pick your one, just love, and you have an ecosystem. But in many cases, you have more ecosystems. You have that kind of weird system at the downstairs, and you have something weird as a service both, and you have databases from the cloud. You have different bits and pieces. It's ecosystems all over the place. And then you have the OT. OT, in many cases, is the most vulnerable component that you have compared to the Windows that, okay, it's encrypted now. You lost everything. Tough day for you. You need to pay Bitcoins to use that. But anyway, you'll survive in many cases. If somebody destroys your OT environment, it's end of the business. If you're producing something comes out, there's a truck picking up something that you produce, and you can't do that anymore. That's it, it's game over. So we are focusing on the wrong things here. And the purpose of the picture is to remind us, the techies that are working with the cyber, that we need to sometimes step away from our comfort zone. We love to buy firewall. I said, I have so many firewalls at home, 2 of them underneath my bed, so my daughter said, what was that stuff? It's a firewall, next gen is a big one. But we need to stop doing that. We need to look at these type of pictures. Where is our business? What do we actually need to protect that? Do we need to actually dump the whole old architecture and bring something new in? Zero trust kind of mentality. We look at the users, we look at the devices, we look at the applications that are being used by our employees. It's a tough job, I can tell you. It's so much easier to go and buy a firewall than look at these type of questions and convince the company to actually change the direction of the IT and cyber. Thank you.
Thank you, Marko, as well. Don't go yet. Do we have any questions from the audience? So we can hand you a hand microphone. Because when I'm looking through the Elisa stage, I don't see any questions other than that someone said hello to you. So,
well, hello back.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe one question. Your presentation name bear the question "Life without firewalls."
Yes.
So, yes or no? Can we have a life without firewalls?
Plausible.
Plausible.
And it's an interesting topic because if I'm talking to the customers that are kind of entering to the scene, they're agile, so kind of cloud-born customers that, first of all, they hate classical network, they hate data center, they hate everything kind of related to the firewall and classical controls that we had, IPSs, because their life has begun at the era of cloud. So they love APIs, applications, and all the kind of elastic workloads and that sort of things. So in their world, they don't have a kind of a historic weight. So it is definitely a doable because their workforce, they don't even have office. They're all over the place. Work where you want. Buy a pad, buy a laptop, work where you want. So where do we put the firewall in that case? You don't have a place in architecture. So it's definitely a doable. I'm seeing that they want to have an access layer, as we call it, the access layer that you use to come to the network, that is super lightweight. Basically, network access translation, and that's about it. So make your own IPs, you're good to go. But if you are kind of a decent-sized company, tons of historic weight, own data centers, cloud roadmap. Yeah, it's not going to happen. But we all see the signs, especially with the encryption, privacy, and all that stuff, that the very trusted thing that we had, the firewall, it's losing its crown. It's not the crown, the cornerstone of cyber anymore. We need to get our hands to the data and cloud networks, users, and that brings us, in many cases, to discussion of zero trust type of thing, users, applications, and systems that you use to access your data.